and let's hold these people accountable for actually organizing society the way that it needs to be organized.
And it's not all DC based. Kentucky legislature today or yesterday voted that they were going to cut the monies available to assist families who are dealing with abuse. In Kentucky, that means the activists may not be able to go outside or go somewhere, but we need to jam that legislature and jam that governor and tell that governor, you've got to veto that. We must stay focused at that local level. And also now, the concept that the slaves used, the extended family, is necessary in this moment. Where, it's not just I'm concerned about my children. It's concerned about other people's children and where that leads us. Just developing a different framework of how we see the world will actually open up the creative ways in which we reach out to each other. It's no more just I, it's we.
Barbara, I want to jump in there for one minute and just say, what you were talking about in terms of the example from Kentucky, right? So what you just said, and I just want to make sure people heard this, is that the legislator in Kentucky has proposed cutting money from actually investigating and prosecuting families, women, kids that are being abused as one of the sources for where the money should come for resolving this problem, right? And that legislator is not suggesting to find the money from the parts of our government and from the people in the society that can afford it most, but instead is trying to take it out from the abused and the battered, right? And so I don't want anyone to miss what you said because this is why we have to do this advocacy on all levels. This is why we have to fight to hold those in power accountable, and why it doesn't have to be this way.
And Liz, can I say real quick? This is why, and I hope we can do some more of these conversations. Liz and I say we have to, theologically and biblically, there's a place where we have to deal with the immediacy, but sometimes for folk to have hope, we have to step out of the immediate problem and say how it happened so that people don't feel like it was inevitable, as Liz said. There's nothing we can do, that we can't use all of this pain as a powerful moment to change things. There's a scripture in the Bible in Micah that says the land is polluted because your politics are polluted. Micah said that in the middle of crisis. He didn't wait till after the crisis was gone. He didn't wait and say, well, let's focus on this right now. And then when this is over, we're going to examine what happened. Sometimes the best examination is when you're hurting. That's when you go to the doctor when you're hurting. Right in that moment, you examine, how did I get here? What happened? And sometimes that in itself is a source of hope for people. Because if we can identify that a lot of this was man or human created, guess what? It can be man or human or woman uncreated. That's a hope that we have to talk about in this moment. And people need to know this. We cannot buy this lie that this was some invisible thing that just happened. We have to counter that in order for people to live in this moment with hope that maybe even in this crazy moment, we can use the exposure to push towards a new world and a new nation and a new possibility.
Thank you very much. I want to just share a few reflections on what you both said and recognize we're almost coming to the end of our call. But I did hear the question around those that are sheltered at home that are also dealing with violence at home. And we're going to post some resources in the Facebook Live thread. And we'll also post them on our Twitter feed. Make sure folks have access to those. But there are resources out there in this moment. And I think this moment that we're all in, being asked to stay home, being asked to, our kids aren't in school, we don't have the tests. It's exposing the incredible cracks in our current system, from the federal to state to municipal level. It's exposing who actually is on our side and fighting for people and who is fighting for those that are trying to profit off of our pain. And it's exposing the fact that, or it's also creating opportunity. You're seeing rules that don't apply anymore. There are people saying, we are in a crisis. These foreclosed homes in downtown Los Angeles with no one living in them, and we have homeless on the street. We're not going to put up with this anymore. People deserve to be in shelter. Everyone deserves human dignity and to be cared for and safe. So rules are not the same rules anymore. In crisis, opportunity is created, and the floor that we're walking on is shifting and moving. And how do we take advantage of it and push for what we actually deserve in this world? And how do we make sure that we are using the time we have to watch the players and what they're doing, and to make sure that we hold them accountable and we push our supposed friends to be bold in this moment, to fight for all of us. Okay, so with time, I'm just going to say, we'll take one more comment, and then we're going to kind of come to some closing words before we wrap for the evening. So Reggie, share one more comment with us for the evening.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you all for the inspiration. We're getting a lot of that from the community. So Star Gillimartin says, we need to be aware that politicians will be looking for ways. So to the comment that Reverend Barber made, we need to be also aware that politicians will be looking for ways to impose more draconian cuts on what is left of our social safety net. This is disaster capitalism, and it will happen as a ruse to help the poor middle class. But the comment I was texting you about, Rana, is community solidarity is just as important as social distancing. Take care of one another and hold hearts and hopes high. Emerging after enduring these challenging times, well rested, we'll be stronger despite our current trouble. And that's from Darren Schraff.
Thank you, Darren.
The payroll tax really, if you examine it all the way out, is another way to undermine Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why part of what we have done, I hope when we work with Move On, we're going to have some sessions to explain to people why this is bad. You know, it's a strange world when the Republicans are talking about giving folk $1,000 income, and the Democrats block some of these companies. But what are they really doing? Why do they just say 1,000? Why do they cap it at 1,000? Because that actually, if you do it, it could then disable us from really getting what we need, an actual real income. So we have to be very discerning in this moment, because a lot of things, what does it mean for the president to say, and nobody really questions, I'm a wartime president? Wait, hold it. What does that mean in terms of policy? Because we have learned from him that every lie and every word ends up getting translated into some regressive policy. And then we have to push back on that. And some of what we have to do is take the words like virus and abuse and apply it to the policies, like the virus of greed. You know, Corona ain't the only virus. We talk about being abusive at home, this abusive system, this abusive form of politics. Sometimes you have to take those very words and extrapolate them out and then reapply them to the society so that people in this moment don't lose their sense of hearing. I'm reminded that in the Bible, real quickly, the greatest movement for justice happened in Ezekiel from the valley of dry bones, from the people among whom it looked like they could not do anything. It was in a moment of deep crisis that those dry bones, those diseased bones, found a way to come together. And I believe that is still very possible. And I would ask this question to everybody here. What kind of world and country would you fight for if you knew what you were dying? That's the question we must ask ourselves. What kind of world would you give your last breath for? And in this moment, we see that the systems that have hidden poverty are not working. They are dying. But in their place, what must we fight for? That's a question, not just to ask if you contact the coronavirus and go to the hospital. But since that is happening, one way we can join in solidarity with those who are literally facing physical death is to step back for a second and say, I'm going to be in solidarity with all people that are tested positive by asking this question. What would I give my energy to if I knew for a fact that death was imminent? And we move from that place and organize from that place and cry from that place and stand from that place. This moment of tremendous pain can just possibly be the final link in the chain of the transformation of major parts of this nation.
Thank you. So I hope that everyone who's watching tonight, I first just thank you so much for joining with us in community. We will do more of these together with all of you. I want to encourage everyone, if you have not yet, to go to moveon.org/poverty and sign on to the petition that we've been talking about tonight, that lists out our demands on Congress, state, and local authorities to take care of all of us and put people over profits. And the one thing you can do tonight and first thing in the morning is call your senator at 855-999-1663 and demand that they put people over profit in their coronavirus response. And they fight for health, housing, and economic stability for every single person in this country and provide extra support for those that are most vulnerable. You can also do a ton more stuff in your community. Your state governor, your state elected officials, your local elected officials, they all have the power to implement some type of policies in your neighborhood that can help support people through this economic and health crisis. You can also join in community and join your neighbors in helping support one another and create solidarity and community virtually online. Join us at moveon.org. We'll be doing this all throughout this moment. With that, I want to ask Reverend Dr. Barber and Reverend Theo Harris if you'd lead us in a closing prayer. We would greatly appreciate it.
We have a prayer that we adopted. I adopted from Red Letter Christians in another country and added to it. Liz, how do you want to do this? You want to close the word and let me read the prayer?
No, you just read it, and that'll be our closing. Thank you.
And let me say to the folks, we want you to do like my grandmama used to do. When I wasn't acting right, my grandmama would say, she would say, and let me tell you another thing. So when you call that senator, you're not going to remember everything on that first call. You call them, and then they're going to say, thank you very much. We got to go. You hang up. Then you remember those folks that don't have a phone, call them back and say, and another thing. That's the kind of vigilance we want to move on with and to act with at this time. May we who know justice and compassion repent for those who have let the viruses of greed and lies make a difficult situation worse. May those who've gone along with the lies just to please narcissism break free and tell the truth. May we who are merely inconvenienced remember those whose lives are at stake. May we who have no risk factors remember those who are most vulnerable. May we who have the luxury of working from home remember those who must choose between preserving their health or making their rent. May we who have the flexibility to care for our children when their schools close remember those who have no options. May we who have to cancel our trips remember those who have no safe place to go. May we who are losing our margin money in the tumult of the economic market remember those who have no margins at all in the first place and who live every day outside the margins. May we who settle in for a quarantine at home remember those who have no home. As fear grips our country and world, let us choose love, and justice and truth. And during this time when we cannot physically wrap our arms around each other, let us find ways to be the loving embrace of God to our neighbors, and let us find a way to still resist injustice as community. Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Barber. Thank you, Reverend Theo Harris. Thank you, Reggie. Everyone who joined us this evening, we wish you health, good health. We wish you safety. We wish you community. You are not alone. We are all in this together. We'll get through this. And we wish you good night.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a lot to unwrap here. This is a very important video. I hope you all have watched me thus far, allowed me to explain to you, what exactly the Poor People's Campaign is, its history, its current revival, a recent revival, all these things. So there's a lot to unpack there. I took a lot of notes. So I'm gonna try to breeze through them and give you some commentary and some analysis, and let's get going here. So, okay, we had forgive me if I don't have all the names. There was I believe it was, let's see, 1, 2, 3. There's 4 people on this call, and I didn't catch all of their names. It's in the video itself, so you'll see that. And I apologize for loosely and talking about the whole conversation, but not necessarily always quoting the individual people. But the executive director of MoveOn.org was God, it's horrible handwriting. I was writing in the dark there, so you guys could see, have a good quality. Rana, oh shit, I'm sorry. Epting or something. Anyway, sorry about that. It's on the video, and you can look her up. So the two reverends, we had the 2 reverends from the Poor People's Campaign. While people are comfortable at home and safe, we need to inspire the U.S. to do better and rise to the occasion. The coronavirus changed everything. We can talk about how he got here, but this is a the Poor People's Campaign is a multiracial coalition of people, Democrats, Republicans, all fighting for 140 million poor Americans. Now think about that. We have a population of 320 million Americans, roughly, or sort of 320 people. This makes up, immigrants, both legal or worker visas, or just people that were forced here by poverty and the war economy that we are very responsible for, and for environmental devastation that the United States is very responsible for and caused the most of it. So these are multiple crises, and we need to address them. People coming from Guatemala, Mexico, all these places, Honduras, etc., beyond Mexico, because there were war on drugs and a lot, just bad trade deals, NAFTA, the USMCA, which passed recently, which a lot of corporate Democrats and all the Republicans touted like it was a good thing. It's a bad thing for workers and the environment. There's minor concessions that are pathetic, like $15 an hour, $14 or $13 an hour for like a small amount of the workers, and some minor environmental concessions while the world burns. It's unacceptable. That's me talking here. Anyway, from a lot of stuff I researched and read, and the laws and stuff that's going on. The Poor People's Campaign is a nonviolent, direct action movement. That means like direct democracy, getting involved, fighting so that the people have a say, or that the people actually pretty much run the government, which is what we're supposed to have. And we have representative democracy, and we need far more anarchy, aka, because they dirtied up the word, the government, to try to say anarchy is chaos. Actually, anarchy is direct democracy, it's true democracy, it's pure democracy. We need a lot more of that in our system. We need to have local control, and eventually it would be nice to have essentially just representatives that literally do what people vote on at all levels of government, and that's very possible, and there's a lot of systems and philosophers who've talked about it. Jean-Jacques Rousseau is a good one to look into. Just for starters, to get a little familiar with the topic. There's a ton of them. I'm not gonna, we'll get into it just now. But let's see. You're talking about dealing with environmental and ecological devastation across the country. You got you want to end the war economy. and talking about there's racism. They're talking about that this germ is affecting all of us. There's racism. There's politicians against that are racist against abortion. There's sexism. There's nationalism, religious nationalism, which puts us in a big mess. So this is what they're talking about. It's a good point. Religious nationalism is very dangerous, and these are religious people. These are Christians. These are reverends talking about this. So remember that. They're saying that this right wing nationalism and nationalism, where America is better than everybody, or all that kind of thinking is debunked, and this coronavirus only exposes the fallacy of those ridiculous viewpoints and dangerous viewpoints. We must work together and see what we can do to change the world together. I mean, obviously that's true. Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II is saying a lot of these things. Our president, and he enables our president, Trump, meaning Trump, enables people in power in all the wrong ways, to use the power for all the wrong ways. In other words, to benefit large corporations, to benefit themselves, to make sure they have insurance, to make sure that they're paid, and get benefits, like even if they only have one term in Congress, but while we suffer and they say that we don't need that. There's so many ways that people in power abuse their power. They're having people go out and vote in Arizona, and Florida and Illinois while the same day. It already should have been canceled to be safe. There was already enough scientists saying we need social distancing and shouldn't gather in large groups or try to stay 6 feet away from everybody in general. And you don't know if you're carrying the disease for quite some time. And this is really serious. So to have people go out and have Joe Biden say people should go out and vote while Bernie Sanders gives a serious speech on coronavirus, that shows you who's who. All right, and Bernie Sanders is rising in national polls while Biden goes down since the debate, and that's only going to increase. And you're going to see a lot of voter discrepancies, irregularities, voter suppression, and that Bernie Sanders is by far the most popular candidate, and there's a media blitz against him, and those in power don't want him there because he is going to hold those in power accountable in the mainstream media, the corporate media. He's going to, you have to give equal coverage to every candidate running in an election. And you can't, and you have to be accountable for what you say. And if you lie or withhold information, you can be held accountable or barred from being, calling yourself news. There's a lot of stuff we need to change. We need to break up these large media conglomerates and have, like we did many times in this country when we used to trust bust. All parties were for it in this country. You can't have, industries controlled by megalith corporations. And that includes people that control our telecommunications and video media, and that's one way I'm communicating with you. So I just noticed, tonight there's a lot more restrictions and videos getting pulled, and I'm doing news and analysis and questioning the people in power on both sides. So, it's kind of funny. They're blaming it on the coronavirus, whether it's YouTube saying there's more standards on Facebook groups. You're not allowed to post. I'm not allowed to post until April 2nd on groups, and that's how I get views. So please share this video. Subscribe to Punk Rock Politics on this YouTube channel. Go to patreon.com/punkrockpolitics and become a patron. I have 5 different tiers. You can be a member for just $1. You can be a burner for $2.70. You could be a true progressive for $7. You could be an activist for $10 and a revolutionary for $27. Now look at what you get. It's incredible. I'm doing, it's incredible, people. I'm doing more than they said I would ever do, and more than anybody has ever done in history. Winning. I'm not the best Trump guy because I can't listen to him. That's why I'm not a good. I don't do good impressions of Biden either, because I can't listen to them because they're both terrible. So we need to put Bernie Sanders in office if we want actual democracy and we want to address things properly and make sure the government's funded and make sure Mike Bloomberg isn't in the administration for Joe Biden, or that the billionaire president or multimillionaire president Donald Trump, depends on how you look at it, he won't release his tax returns. Pretty dishonest, promised he would, is not doing it. Anyway, the point is that we definitely we need things to change. He's talking here about how we've long ignored the poor. And 100 years later, it's crazy how how long we've ignored the poor in this country. Remember, people suffering around the world, not just America. It's a really important point. Now, I know it's hard. We have to focus on national policies, but we have to keep in our hearts and minds the struggles of other countries, and we need to learn from what they're doing that's quelling the spread of this disease and causing the least amount of suffering and economic devastation and everything. Spain had nationalized their healthcare, and that's something we need to do, like they do in England, where they pay way less money than me and have far better outcomes and better health and save money. 22 studies said Medicare for all, including even when a few of the studies lied and used a more expensive plan than Bernie Sanders. But all of them, even the ones that were trying to be a hit piece, even conservative think tanks and libertarian think tanks, actually admitted Medicare for all saves us money and it saves us lives. So it's the ethical and moral thing to do. It's the economic thing to do, and that's true of pretty much every progressive policy that's ever been tested throughout history. Is that as I'm going to get into later, they say you pull people up from the bottom and it trickles up. So it's the biggest lie in U.S. politics and around the world, this trickle down economics that Reagan was talking about. You give money to the rich and it goes to the poor. It's the opposite. You give money to the poor and it goes up. All right. So because people that don't have any money will now get cell phones, they'll pay their cell phone bill that was delinquent and turn it back on. They'll buy an apartment or buy goods they need, buy technology they need to produce and do something for society. They'll go to school. We should make schools free, and so we have more medical professionals. So we have more scientists. So we have more people to disseminate information, more journalists, investigative journalists to hold politicians accountable. We need to break up the media conglomerates. Well, you have five companies owning all our TV channels. That's scary. They control all of our information and what gets said and what doesn't, and that's a problem. And that's not freedom, and that's not democracy. So anyway, today said there's a lot of, talking about there's a lot of fear, anger, frustration, suffering. God, my handwriting's terrible. Sorry. Reverend Dr. Liz Theohoris, she was saying that people are already suffering. There's low-wage workers being sent home without pay, school children that are in precarious situations because they rely on the meals in school to sustain them and to make them healthy and be able to focus and be happy, to keep them from getting sick. And as everybody's parent out there, to keep them from going crazy and driving you nuts. So she goes on and she says that we got to learn from the past mistakes. She's talking about how the polio epidemic affected, I believe, her aunt and or mother, and that we need people in power. We need people in power should not profit. People in power should not profit off of this like in the past. We need to change that. So people with COVID-19, there's disarray and despair. What do I control in this moment? What agency do I have? What do I control? She's saying that she wasn't vulnerable. She was healthy, and less to be affected and younger. But that she's afraid to transmit it to more vulnerable people. She wants to help contribute and give to community and help those that struggle. Together we can succeed and move people in power. To do the right thing. So Dr. William J. Barber II is talking again. He's talking about how Woodrow Wilson, our president, back in the beginning of the 1900s, how he was a racist, but there was a swine flu epidemic, and that brought us together. And he said, we are inextricably tied together, and we can't separate black and gay and put all these people in different groups and say that they're not important or they're not part of us. We're all tied together, whether you like it or not. We're the human race. And we see how interconnected the environment is. When it comes to species die-off and destroying the country and just mass consumption and lack of recycling programs and using oil to make products like plastic that we can't even get out of our water now, and it's getting worse and worse. We need to get rid of plastics and make them illegal around the world. We need to end fossil fuel extraction. This is me talking here about this, but they get into some of that, but it's couldn't go on forever, and I'm sure they all got plenty of stuff going on. You heard some kids yelling in the background at one point, so probably getting restless. Hundreds of wealthy politicians left us woefully unprepared for this. He said, Trump said we're not a delivery system, which he said is sad, and we need to be, and he's absolutely right. We need to actually, Trump likes to say all this stuff like we need to bring back, business and build things here again and do things right. But then when we actually get the opportunity, he doesn't really believe that, so he's lying to you. And Bernie Sanders has a record of telling the truth, so that's why I endorse Bernie Sanders, because he's honest. But Joe Biden and Trump lie just religiously, and their record contradicts everything they say. Trump was a Democrat, he was a Republican, he was this, he was that. He gave money to the Clinton Foundation. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are friends. So if you look into it, I mean, there's articles about Trump and Clinton and Bill Clinton talking about how they would talk hours on end, at least once a month for like 20 or 30 years. Last 20 or 30 years at least. There's pictures of them laughing together. Hillary Clinton and the Bush family, the George W. Bush, Jeb Bush, go and give speeches together and get paid huge sums to speak to people on Wall Street and speak to, people in power. And, that's why I think they let Trump I think it might have been rigged personally. They let Trump go into office and be like, put this clown in office. He'll distract everybody and act like a jerk and say whatever he wants. Because, and we'll say Hillary won the popular vote. And so he doesn't have full legitimacy. But that's all because Hillary Clinton would have been impeached and it would have been like a house of cards and they all would have fell. And right now, the International Criminal Court is investigating the war crimes of Iraq. And, Donald Rumsfeld, Karl Rove, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, obviously George W. Bush, they all need to pay. Dick Cheney, all these people need to pay for what they did. The millions of lives they damaged, millions of lives that were lost in Iraq, the thousands of lives that were lost by American soldiers. The cost of this was enormous and is still growing. It was the longest war. And then Afghanistan. We need to get out of Afghanistan. I do agree with Rand Paul that we need to get the hell out of these foreign wars. That's one issue he's correct on. There are many issues he's ridiculous on, but that is an issue where right wing and left wing can come together. Libertarian, he's honestly libertarian, but the problem is he's co-opted by money, just like all the other politicians, except Bernie Sanders, because he's only taking money. And other progressives, AOC ran her insurgent campaign and took out the fifth most popular Democrat in the House. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in Queens. New York as a House representative. Jay Appel, all these other people, we came together and we decided that the people with integrity said we're gonna take donations. We're not going to fight big money with big money, and that's what needs to be done. We need the only people that we're accountable for should be our constituents, the people. So that's why we need more progressives. And people who refuse to take money. We need public funding of elections. Anyway, let's get back to what they were talking about here. Trump said we're not, that's sad, we're not a delivery system, we should be. Yeah, we need to have all services. We can't be just a service economy, but we need to produce things. We need to fund music and the arts. We've just taken that out of schools, and it's left us to extreme detriment. We don't focus enough on science. Our labs are woefully underfunded, even in more fortunate towns like mine. We are limited extremely to our education. We don't teach civics anymore and teach people about government, and that's how they win power. Our education system is a joke. In college, even if you're at a good college, you're learning what you should have been learning in middle school. Our public education, and especially our private education, especially in college, is a joke. We need to fund better. We need to pay adjunct professors more money. They only get like $10 an hour. Look it up. Some of them work like 3 jobs and cross borders and work constantly. They don't have an office. So if you're a student of theirs, you like them, you can't even find them in an office. They're not around. It's a nightmare. And that's even true in public schools. It's true in public and private schools. So that needs to change. We need to pay our teachers way more money. There's countries where that's the highest paid profession, and most, something like 70 or 80% of students say they want to become a teacher, and they have amazing societies with higher tax rates for everybody, but without the corruption and without the money disappearing. And guaranteed, like 75% of the people are guaranteed to have an apartment or a home for life. They're guaranteed to have pensions. They're guaranteed to have all these social safety nets. Their kids get taught by PhDs from preschool all the way to college, and it's all free, and yet it saves the society money and makes them more prosperous and is a boom to the economy. More equality, more democracy, and they are ranked actually at way higher happiness levels than the United States. I mean, it's just all scientific fact here. So anyway, so Democrats say that 500 people, a couple corporations with 500 people or more don't have to pay paid sick leave, and if we continue this, we will be more susceptible in this crisis and in the previous crises and what's all led to this crisis. He said Trump says we didn't see this coming. And the Reverend said yes we did, through the history, the devastation of the environment. And he said that the senator was warned and told his wealthy donors instead of warning the nation. He was given a brief on the coming COVID-19 and coronavirus issue and potential impact, and told his wealthy donors instead of telling Americans and his constituents. So they want you to call your senators. This was filmed earlier, or yesterday by the time I actually probably release this video. Call your senators in the morning. Call your senators when the office is open. Leave messages even when if you can't call them when it's open. Leave them messages. If you fill up politicians' voicemails with demands and keep them simple, or keep them in some cases make them very laid out. Send emails. Send letters. Use recycled paper and use stuff that are in the house. Send letters to people at all levels of government, and don't forget a lot of people are sick and quarantined and can't make these calls. So if do everything you can to make sure we get a real response that puts people over profits. It said here's the number where you can call your senators and it'll connect you to everybody you need. The number is 855-999-1663. Again, that's 855-999-1663. You tell your senators to put people before profit, provide us with everybody with health, housing, and a stimulus for all, and stimulus for everybody, and extra help for the most vulnerable. You can go on moveon.org, circling it now, to sign the petition. And right here it's moveon.org. /poverty, and this is where you can sign the petition with a list of demands that the Poor People's Campaign are putting out there. So it's talking about how the pandemic and poverty are connected. What we need to do to demand, what we need to demand Congress do, and I think this number is very important. 140 million poor people in the United States of America. That's what they said. 140 million poor people in a country of 320 million people. That's almost half our population. That's before this happened. And we have allowed this to happen while the rich keep making massive gains and exploiting our labor. It's absurd. Capitalism has proven to be a failure, and definitely globalization and unregulated capitalism. See, we already are a mix of socialism and capitalism. This shows you. And we built the biggest middle class by doing the New Deal, the New Deal, and then with the following president after FDR, and then Truman extended the New Deal into the New Deal, and then and Eisenhower, a Republican, for 2 terms from 1950 to 58, he had a 91% tax on the wealthy and corporations. We built the biggest middle class in recorded human history. In this country. And since the 80s, we have done trickle-down economics and give tax breaks to the rich, cut social safety nets, and this is true. The Reagan administration, George H.W. Bush administration, Bill Clinton administration, George W. Bush administration, the Obama administration, and the Trump administration. Bernie Sanders is calling for sensible, economically proven policies that will actually do better for all of us, and we just need to make sure we have a real safe election system, not from Russia. No, we should, from all countries. We don't want interference, although we do interfere with countries all over the world's elections, and we should stay out of them and not have military coups like we continue to do, and have economic sanctions that screw the poor people. That's another thing that I want to touch on that they didn't touch on, and that's that we need to stop the sanctions to people in Iran, Venezuela. We are trying to create an unrest, and the sanctions don't affect the people in power as much as, or anywhere near as much, or barely, or not at all in most cases. It affects the working and lower classes. It affects the people, not the people in power, for the most part, and it devastates them where they can't get medicine, they can't get trade, and then it bankrupts the government. And oftentimes these people stay in power and have even more authoritarian repressive regimes which don't allow journalism, kill protesters, and we sit by and laugh until we feel like we might want to overthrow their government and install somebody who gives us better deals on substances we shouldn't even use, like oil, natural gas, coal, the fossil fuels that are destroying the planet, killing over 1 billion species in Australia, killing American fighter fighters trying to help the people in Australia, killing a bunch of Australian fighter fighters, killing people everywhere, lighting Los Angeles, Paradise, California on fire. Everybody's at risk of environmental crisis, of this pandemic, this global pandemic that is COVID-19, that is coronavirus. We got issues here, and we need to address them. So this is very serious stuff, people. So saying, before this, we had the poor 140 million poor people before the coronavirus, before COVID-19 had job loss and medical bills. 15 million can't afford water. 15 million people in the richest country on earth, in the United States of America, can't afford water. And there's people I even met today who weren't practicing social spacing and staying 6 feet away, and was being obnoxious and saying, well, a bunch of people are lazy. I said, well, I'm not lazy, man, and I do a channel, and I don't have any donations. I don't make any money. I'm spending like sometimes 20, 30 hours a day on it, and I'm also going to try to get all the work I can, but I have to stay safe, and I know my family's vulnerable. So I'm doing everything I can, and I've gone to school, and I've worked hard jobs that have broken my body. I got screwed when I got in a car accident and didn't have insurance, or had to go through my father's insurance because I live with him and I don't drive. I was the passenger in a car. I never got help. I had to go through 2 attorneys, and ultimately I never got any. I have medical debt for being a passenger in a car and having my body severely screwed up and affecting the fact that I can't work physical jobs, which is pretty much all I ever did was restaurant work and landscaping and masonry and tree removal, etc. So, it's a big problem for me to make money. So, the economy's changed, and this is part of the economy. So please consider going to patreon.com/punkrockpolitics and become a patron. I'm going to keep giving you all this information, ways to contact your congressman, videos from the Poor People's Campaign. Tomorrow I'm going to do a video of Trump's response for the virus, but I think I'm going to have to do it after work later in the day, and I might even release it the next day. I know it came out today too, but there's just been so much going on. I released a video earlier. If you go to patreon.com/punkrockpolitics/punkrockpolitics, you will, not twice, just to be clear, patreon.com/punkrockpolitics. I have a video on there where I exposed NJ.com removing a very favorable poll for Bernie Sanders. Then I tweeted the author who posted on Twitter about the article and asked if there was a response, gave them plenty of time, and they did put the video back up. So I gave them time to respond before I posted the video. So I committed my first piece of investigative journalism where I got a positive response for democracy and won a small fight against the mainstream and corporate media, which we need to fight. We need more investment in independent journalism and having more media choices and not having large corporations and wealthy individuals own all these companies: Vox, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, Disney, NBC, Bloomberg, etc. These are conglomerates that control our thoughts, and they mislead you or lie constantly, especially when they want somebody in office like Joe Biden. Joe Biden is going to cut he's going to cut everything. He's going to be a terrible president, and he'd never be president because he's still, as incompetent as Trump has been and as corrupt, he will still probably lose to Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders is battle tested, and he has a squeaky clean record. Look at all the money that Hillary Clinton poured into investigating him. Donald Trump doing opposition research, and they can't find anything on the guy because he's an honest, decent person who's been fighting for social justice and environmental justice and racial justice his entire life. Joe Biden lied about fighting for civil rights. Bernie Sanders actually did it. Joe Biden's lied so many times it's disturbing. Go on, as Bernie Sanders said, go on the YouTube. Listen, anyway, I digress. So there's 4 million people, so there's 15 million people who can't afford water in the richest country in the world, and there's 4 million who turn on their water, and the water is total poison. We still haven't fixed the problems in Flint that are spreading all over the place. Where I am right now, my water is said to be very bad, and so is Union Beach and Middletown. We have problems. Serious problems, so many crises, the opioid crisis. These things are because of capitalism and because of corruption in politics, and not the people not being represented and not having proportional representation. It shouldn't be a winner-take-all election system. If we want other parties and more influence and more people power, we need to end closed primaries and allow independent voters, Republicans or Democrats, to all vote in the same primary. We should have ranked choice voting so you can pick your first choice, second choice, third choice. There you go. That's how it works. All right, people. Publicly funded campaigns. Get rid of Citizens United. Have a constitutional amendment to get rid of Citizens United. Get money out of politics. Period. And we shouldn't have to have the working class and poor people fight so hard while the DNC cheats Bernie Sanders for a second time, even more obviously, and steals an election. Those people should not be voting in vain, donating what little money they have and time they have to fight for something that's just, Bernie Sanders is considered a moderate in industrialized nations all over the world. In all the wealthy industrialized nations, Bernie Sanders would become a moderate. Even in struggling nations that have more democracy, Bernie Sanders would be considered a moderate. In this country, in the 40s, the 30s, and the 20s, Bernie Sanders could have ran for either party. He'd be a moderate. He wouldn't be a progressive. He's not really a communist or a socialist. Shouldn't have called himself that. But democratic socialism, he's just saying we need social programs that look out for the poor, people over profit. That's all. Make sure that our people are all taken care of. He's not even saying that some people can't make more money. Anyway, so, they're talking about the minimum wage. People can't afford, to get even an apartment, in some cases at all, or they can't afford even a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment with many kids or a few kids or just one kid or whatever, or, a family member they have to take care of, whatever. People can't even afford sometimes studio apartments. I mean, I don't know. It depends on where you live. So they're talking about a movement across the whole country. But in New Jersey, you could work make like $20 or $30 an hour, and you still probably can't even afford a decent 1 bedroom anywhere in this area. For the most part, it's crazy. If anyone, it's more expensive than Brooklyn, where I'm at. Even with all the trust fund people going in and overpaying for rent and them raising the rent through the roof and all the gentrification, which is terrible. We need to change all these things. Anyway, and community is what it's all about. So if anyone has no shelter, I can't read that. I'm sorry. They're saying there's deep inequality compounding this crisis of COVID-19. We got big corporations that pay the least. And we need housing for all. We need to protect democracy. We need healthcare for all. All of this now. Debt relief now. We need to do all the things that we've been putting off for the last 40 years and taking away from people and build a progressive society where everybody prospers and we all are happier. We all can work less if we choose to, or work more, and that we're rewarded fairly and equally, and that everybody wins. When the worker digs the ditch or makes the taco or washes your clothes or watches your kids, we're all interconnected. That's how you get to do all the things you do. So we need to work together, and people should come together on projects in the neighborhood, and we should all, instead of paying money, if there's a few people in the neighborhood that could help the lady down the street whose roof caved in during another storm or something, and then me and my buddy and my neighbors, we can go help and fix the roof for her. Shouldn't have to pay somebody. It should be community. Right now we have social distancing. We have to really oblige social distancing because people aren't doing it by me, and it's very dangerous, and it's putting all of us at risk. I went out today and I did not like what I saw in my town of Hazlewood, New Jersey. I did not like it at all. Anyway, Reverend Barber said we must first address those already in the crisis. Both parties don't like, they always talk about the middle class, but never the poor. And we have a shrinking middle class that's barely existent anymore. It's either poor or rich. So, you keep saying, oh, people are lazy, you screw the poor people, and you're going to become one of those people if you even survive. I mean, you can get a toothache and die, as my friend Ed says. You could stub your toe and die. So, work your ass off to still be poor, and then you can just be in massive debt while you're working your ass off at a poor paying job without medical benefits, without having Medicare for all. See, this is the thing. Medicare for all would obviously save money because companies don't have to pay for insurance anymore, and you can go to any doctor anywhere in the country, or psychologist, or psychiatrist, or a dentist. That's what we need. Getting braces and shit, that's not, as I was talking about in one of my previous videos, that's not something that's merely for aesthetic purposes. That's something that affects your heart and all your other organs. It's part of your health, and we don't cover braces to straighten people's teeth when they were grinding them or had stress or got in an accident or got hit or any of those things. So anyway, so what must be done, and we have the resources to do it, so we have to do these things. We have to help the poor. So it's okay for $5 trillion to go to tax cuts and start a stock market infusion, which literally just the 1.5 trillion a few days ago disappeared. The market went back up. The stock market, that's where they infused it, went back up, and then it went right back down in an hour. $1.5 trillion gone. And they printed it. And they said, well, it's not the taxpayer money. We just moved some decibels on a computer. We'll then do that for all the things we need. Medicare for all, paid sick leave, inexcusable. Do it for homes for everyone.